Good morning, church. Lord bless you today. Mark chapter 11 again. If you remember the context from yesterday's devotion, Jesus entered Jerusalem, came into the temple, and after looking around at everything, upon and around and on everything, he left Bethany with the 12 since it was already late. And then if you move down to verse 15, after he leaves and he comes back to cleanse the temple, it says this, Mark 11:15, they came to Jerusalem, he entered the temple, began to drive out those who were buying and selling in the temple, and he overturned the tables of the money changers and the seats of those who were selling doves, and he would not permit anyone to carry merchandise through the temple, and he began to teach and say to them, "Is it not written, my house shall be called a house of prayer for all nations? But you have made it a robber's den," or good old King James, a den of thieves. I want to share a couple of devotional thoughts with you about Jesus cleansing the temple, one for today and the other one perhaps tomorrow. First for today, Jesus carefully noted that the outer court, the court of the Gentiles, where this was happening, of the temple, is the house of God, and it was not being used as it was meant to be. This is supposedly the place where the Gentiles can come in and see faithful followers of God, worshiping God, praying, learning about God. It was in essence to be a place for those seeking answers about God, the God of Israel, to find those answers and to find sincere followers of God. That's how the outer court was supposed to work. For years, I thought when Jesus says you were turning into a den of thieves, when he called the money changers and the merchants thieves, he meant that they were doing dirty business. But I really like what G. Campbell Morgan says. The Jews were robbing the Gentiles of their space to learn about God. That space was for the Gentiles to learn about God, and the Jews were using it to sell merchandise and to use it as a travel thoroughway. And they were totally unconcerned about the Gentiles seeking after God. And so Jesus calls them robbers. They literally had begun to act in a way, behave in a way, and practice activities that kept the Gentiles from being able to seek after God. So I'll just ask you to ponder this with me. Are there ways that we act or behave or practice as followers of Christ in our fellowship, in our churches, in our small groups, in our gatherings, even as Christians when we just stand around and talk to one another, that rob unbelievers of the chance to learn? I know that's a pretty deep question, but it's really one worth asking, because Jesus is so troubled by this. He returns to the temple and he cleanses it. He literally runs all these people off. So the court is, at least has the opportunity to become what it's supposed to be. Here's one thing to ponder for today. Do you send off vibes to unbelieving people that you're better than they are? As a follower of Christ, do you look down on those others? Do you exude this air of rightness instead of humility around those who are struggling in sin? So just to finish out today, Jesus was more right than any of us will ever be. He was always right, and he never looked down upon sinful man. And I think that's the attitude of humility that we're supposed to have around those who are struggling in sin. Even if they're willfully, rebelliously struggling in sin, I think it's the attitude we're supposed to have. Let's not have attitudes that isolate unbelieving people. Let's try to embrace them where they are and see if we can talk to them about the one who died on the cross to save us from all our sins. I love you guys. I'll see you back tomorrow.